So I was reading this article by Bloomberg columnist Matt Levine. Elon got his money, but that's actually not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is if you scroll down a little bit, and not the section called high water. Yeah, it's this section in here called arbitration. So it's going to take a little bit of time to explain, but Uber's strategy to limit the amount of money it has to pay out when people sue the company seems like it's backfiring on it. So I guess I'm just going to start reading, and then we'll go from there. So it costs a lot of money to bring a lawsuit or to defend one. Lots of bad things might happen to you illegally, and you might not, and you might want to get them fixed, but it is so expensive to sue that you won't. So for example, if the cable company illegally overcharges you $5, you can complain, but you can't realistically sue. Lots of other things, including much more important things, are like this. Like if your employer discriminates against you because of racism, your potential monetary damages might not be enough to get a lawyer who's interested in taking the case. Often the structure of these things is that some big corporation does the bad thing, and then lots of little individuals like consumers, employees, etc., will suffer the bad thing. The individuals aren't rich enough to sue to vindicate some points of principle, and the company is rich enough to defend itself. So there are two solutions to this. I'm going to go over this one first. It's class action. The other solution is arbitration. So class action is where thousands of little individuals band together to sue the company, and they argue that all their cases are similar enough that they should all be treated as one. Even though the individual claims are small, the case as a whole is big enough to warrant to get the lawyers interested. And this often favors the little claimants. They get their claims heard in court, and then there's also a decent chance of big damages against the big company that did the bad thing. And that's why there are certain websites like class action lawsuits where they post a bunch of class action suits that have been finalized, and you can sign up, and if you did indeed get whatever rights violated, or you bought cereal at a certain time, or you used Plaid during like 2013 to 2019, you may be compensated. Usually it's not that much. Anyway, the other solution is arbitration. You have some more informal private system of adjudicating claims that is faster and easier than the normal legal system. Generally, this favors the big company. It pays less to defend the cases, and there's a sense that the arbitrators might be more favorable to it, and then the arbitration can be kept quieter than the litigation. So the big company might make arbitration mandatory in its employment contracts or consumer contracts, and it might like arbitration so much that it will even pay for the costs of it, making it quote unquote cheap for consumers or employees, and that's a further incentive for them to pursue this solution, arbitration. And now enters Uber. Yes. So actually, before we enter Uber, we enter a very enterprising lawyer named, let's see, what is his name? William Consovoy. So he was a former lawyer for Trump, and he's going to get Uber to pay close to $1/10 billion to a society called the American Arbitration Association. So how did that happen? It happened like this. So actually, the background here is pretty good. This is written by Holland and Knight, which is a law firm, I think. Not exactly sure. I'm not a lawyer. I'm only reading this because it's interesting, and I'm only sharing this because I think it's the cream of the crop. It's the most interesting thing I've read all night. So the case happened. So the case first arose in a response to an initiative launched by Uber following the death of George Floyd in May 2020, in which Uber and subsequently Uber announced that it would waive delivery fees to certain Black-owned businesses for Uber Eats customers. The law firm Consovoy, who we saw here, McCarthy PLLC, then gathered more than 31,000 claimants who paid delivery fees to non-Black-owned restaurants, and then filed arbitration demands, claiming that the fees constituted unlawful reverse race discrimination. Uber's terms of use contained a provision mandating binding arbitration before the American Arbitration Association, AAA, and in accordance with their arbitration rules. So under those rules, Uber, as the corporate defendant, was required to pay a $500 filing fee, a $1,400 case management fee, and a $1,500 arbiter fee for each individual case. So these three added up together is what, 2,900 plus 500, so 3,400. And then this happened for 31,000 cases. Actually, it was even more than 31,000. Here, 31,560 cases that were materially identical for all intents and purposes, because these are all people who placed an order at a non-Black-owned restaurant and paid a delivery fee. So the work that's done by this law firm, Consovoy and McCarthy, is, I guess, the marginal cost after filling out the first form should be very low. I guess it's changing the name, maybe the date, the address, the contact information, stuff like that. But I'm going to keep reading here. So let's see, we went over all of this. So actually, this was old news that Uber is subjugated to pay nearly $100 million in fees. In fact, this was, I guess, Uber filed an injunction to block, I guess Uber didn't want to pay these arbitration fees, understandably, so it filed an injunction to block the process from continuing. And this article, and that was as of like September of last year, so it's been nearly half a year. But it was only recently, literally a week ago, where a New York court said Uber is responsible for its actions. So the New York State Appeals Court sent an unmistakable message last week to companies that have imposed mandatory arbitration and class action waivers on their customers. They said, or I guess the author of this piece says, you are stuck with the consequences of that strategy being the mandatory arbitration, even if it winds up costing you tens of millions of dollars in upfront arbitration fees. So apparently Uber actually, I think Uber actually got a quote unquote discount rate. Yeah, so apparently the AA even discounted the filing fees for Uber, but if you take $3,400 per case that gets arbitrated, multiplied by what, the 31,560 people whose cases are going to be filed, that gets you to a little more than 91 million. So that's why the American Arbitration Association is giving Uber a little bit of leeway, though the total is expected to top $91 million in fees alone. So this is even before the claimants will settle with Uber to get some sort of reimbursement, if any. But just fees alone, $91 million, an amount Uber called astronomical. That's just funny to me. Uber's strategy backfired so much on it, and I think Matt Levine puts it in a great way. He says, so I'm sorry, without endorsing the specific claim here, I have to say this is good trolling. And and he says if he was working for the AA, he'd be quietly signing up more lawyers to do this because for the AA accounted for 75% of the association's total operating revenue in 2020, operating revenue. So that's almost bottom line, and yeah, it's I don't know. I kind of feel bad for Uber, but at the same time, uh, I guess they kind of had this coming for them. Although I'm sure lots of other companies do have arbitration clauses in their terms of use as well. Um, but yeah, we'll just have to see how this plays out. But this is I think this is a brilliant strategy, and I'm not here to endorse one side or the other either. Um, but I do have the Uber 10K pulled up. This is the 2021 10K, I believe. So yeah, so the year ended 2021. Something I learned today was you could search section 8. Sorry, not section 8, item 8. And then that is always going to be the financial statements section. And you can scroll down and then find all the financial statements, and it's super easy. See, so I'm curious to see how big of an impact $91 million would have on Uber. So in terms of let's see, this is in millions. So if looking just at cash, let's see, 2021 is here. So they had $4.2 billion of cash on their books. So there's the 91 million. So they could pay it. That's totally fine. And let's see. Current assets, they have 8 billion. They have some restricted cash, nearly $11 billion in investments. That's pretty impressive. That's almost makes a good chunk, makes up a good chunk of their market cap. See some goodwill. That's a lot of goodwill. It's a big acquisition, I guess. But let's see, on the liability side, some accounts payable, insurance reserves. A lot of accrued liabilities. See, total current liabilities is 9 billion. That's more than their current assets. So they have negative working capital. That's interesting. And then total liabilities adds up to 23 billion, while total assets is only 38. If you back out goodwill from that, that's 30 billion. So I guess they do have more assets and liabilities, but not by that much. But this is where I guess I'm more interested. So here are the years 2019, 2020, 2021. Of course, Uber has never been profitable, although they were just barely unprofitable last year. So hypothetically, if they took let's just say $100 million charge, how bad would that look? Well, it's not like they were profitable last year, but let's see, a charge like that would probably go under, I'm guessing, other income and expense, because it should be non-recurring in nature. So I think that should go. The official term is actually maybe it should go after taxes. I'm not exactly sure where, because for discontinued operations slash charges that are non-recurring in nature, they should be they should be included under the line, under the net income line, I believe, net of tax. But anyway, I guess that's a little too much jargon, and I have to review my CFA notes. But let's see, they brought in $17 billion in revenue last year. See, cost of operations was 9.3 billion. So, and then operations, sales, and marketing, R&D, which has actually decreased markedly. See, took some depreciation charge. Actually, that's really high compared to the past 2 years. G&A 2.3 billion. Income expense, which I guess isn't as bad as before. And then and let's see. So I guess, benefit from income taxes. So they got some benefit for I guess the losses, or maybe they had some deferred tax assets from previous, but net loss ended up being 570 million dollars. So at this run rate, it seems like Uber may be profitable this coming year. Although if they're just barely profitable, perhaps profitable by less than $100 million, it seems like this suit may prevent Uber from reaching the coveted position of finally being profitable. Yeah, and honestly, it's so crazy to me to think Uber has a market cap of like 40 billion, I think. I'm curious. Actually, Uber stock is fine. Yeah, 60 billion. And don't even get me started about DoorDash. I think DoorDash's market cap is, 30 billion. And you can compare these to, I don't know, like Domino's, for example, only has a market cap of like 15, 13, or like or like how about Nasdaq? I think Nasdaq's market cap is probably less than DoorDash. Yeah, um, it's just crazy to think how stretched some of these valuations are still, even when factoring, when factoring that Nasdaq is a very established company. It pays a dividend, while Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, none of these companies have ever turned a profit. Although I think Lyft did turn profitable on an adjusted basis, but that's beside the point. Um, but net, I thought this was a really interesting section of this article, and it's one of these, I guess, more involved legal procedures that I guess unless you went to law school or studied some law in college, or you like to read about the stuff for fun, that you probably wouldn't have known. But thanks, Matt Levine, and thanks for listening. And I do plan on making more videos as time goes on. So if you feel so inclined, you can like the video and or subscribe. Okay, peace.